back to the Metro on 1019 WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham. Now, we're all familiar with social media and the impact it's had on society. And while millions of people use these platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, subcultures have risen and taken root. Now, there's Twitter. We've all heard of it. But then there's Black Twitter. Black Twitter is, on its surface, Black people on Twitter. But to so many who've experienced it, it became a creative and infectious way to connect. From the start, Black Twitter permeated popular culture and sparked social change. It became a popular ecosystem during major events, and Black people went to Twitter to read about what went down and to watch the timeline react with jokes, memes, and laughter. In her book, Black Social Television, How Black Twitter Changed Television, Professor Sherry Williams argues it completely changed the way we watch our favorite shows. But just how did Black Twitter become that place for so many people? And what lasting impact does it have on our culture? Professor Sherry Williams teaches race, culture, and communication at American University, and she is also a Michigan native. She joins us now to discuss all of it. Professor Williams, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. And what up, though, Detroit?
What up, though?
What up?
I love that so much. So this conversation, I mean, of course, one of my favorite topics right now is talking about social media, but the subcultures that we've built out of social media, how did Black Twitter change television?
Black Twitter changed television significantly. First of all, it gave us an opportunity to speak directly to the television writers, directors, producers, showrunners, and networks, and have a direct line to tell them what we felt was offensive, what we felt dehumanized us, and also what we wanted to see more of, how we wanted to see our stories told authentically that really showed our humanity and didn't lean into a lot of the stereotypes that we have seen on television for decades.
We're definitely going to get into that. So in your book, you describe how Twitter and other social apps recreated a co-viewing experience similar to like a watch party. Now it's almost second nature. Like, how did we even begin to use Twitter in that way?
One of the things that I talk about in the book is Scandal. And so we all love Scandal. And it was, TGIT, ABC
Kerry
Scandal.
Washington.
Yes. White Hat, Red Wine scandal.
Okay.
Shonda Rhimes' scandal.
One of my favorite rewatches.
Yeah. But what people don't really realize is that when Scandal came out in April 2012, it was a mid-season replacement. And we know that mid-season replacements don't always make it. But one of the core reasons why Scandal did is because when it came on the air, it was the first time in about 40 years that we had a Black woman as a protagonist, as the lead in a network nighttime drama. Before, we hadn't had one since like the 70s and with Get Christy Love, right? Wow. So that's pretty much around the time I was born.
Yeah.
And so when this show came out, the Black social television audience jumped on it because we were really thirsty for quality, complex television that represented Black women. Because I know that a lot of people find reality television to be problematic. I don't just automatically dismiss everything that's on reality TV. But if we think about the early 2010s, that's pretty much where we saw Black women in particular on television. So Scandal was new, and it was a different, more complex representation. So this was something that Black folks were going to watch because it was the first in a very long time, and it was very well done. And at the same time, Black people are using social media a lot more as a social justice tool. So, and we're using it as a way to not only communicate with one another, kind of like a national, international water cooler, and we're also using it to speak back to some of the injustices that we see in society in general. So it becomes this way that Black folks speak back and resist in terms of social media and also representation on television and film.
You know, at that time, you're talking about when Scandal came out, I was still in college. I want to say my sophomore, junior year, and I just remember how ravenous people were to watch it. I mean, they were eating it up, talking about it on social media. It was something that I would hear about just in class or just walking around campus. And it was really, really great. And then right after that, we had How to Get Away with Murder.
Yes.
And that just kind of
Annalise Keating.
I mean, it just blew the floodgates wide open in terms of representation, especially for what a Black woman could look like on television, which was amazing to see. So there's an intimacy or closeness that exists between viewers who watch TV in the same space. People won't just let anyone in their homes. We know about that. So Can we say the same about the digital space?
I think that's different too, but I think it's also conditional. So one of the things that I think is really interesting about Black Twitter is that we were having private conversations out in the open. And so when you think about Annalise Keating taking off her wig and smearing off her makeup and basically disarming herself from all of the mask that Paul Laurence Dunbar talks about that we have to use to shield ourselves from white supremacy, misogyny, capitalism, all of these horrible forces that we have to face. We saw her taking that off in that moment. And that was a moment that really resonated with Black women in general. And we talked about it on Twitter, but that was a conversation that the rest of America got to open up and see, because unfortunately, we still live in a very segregated society.
Yes.
And we still don't have a lot of close relationships with people who are not like us, but we are able to meet people who are not like us through television and film. And through that episode, people were able to see what Black women actually experience every day when they're going out into the world, when they're going out into work. And so, again, that's a conversation that they were able to be privy to by watching the show. I also think about Empire, which was another big social media hit. And Gabourey Sidibe, who we know is a larger Black woman and actress. And there was this scene where she was on a rooftop getting down with her boyfriend. Very sexy scene. He was fine, too. Very muscular, very fine. And so, but we know that she is not muscular. She is a rotund, overweight Black woman. And so the conversation was a lot about like, wow, he's with her. Yeah. What is he doing with her? Like, oh my God, this is so, like, Fox, why are y'all showing us this? But what that scene did was also open up a conversation about fat Black women's sexuality and desirability. And they're honestly just the way that they deserve love and affection and really great sex just like everybody else. So there's this Black feminist writer, Cecily Bowen, started this hashtag, #MyFatSexStory. And that ended up turning into basically like a week-long conversation about fat Black women's sex stories. And again, this all started from this opening scene in Empire and everything that went on Empire would trend, that night.
Yes.
But that was a conversation that lasted for days, for over a week, because of the way that she entered this conversation that was on digital media. So social media has really done a lot in terms of opening up conversations for Black people to talk about different social justice, reproductive health, sexual health issues that we really haven't done before, or we have done it maybe as a community in different segments, but the rest of the country has not always been privy to those conversations.
And I think about one of the most recent trends that we saw in terms of, seeing a Black woman who may not have the features that we see in everyday life with the statue in New York and the discourse around the statue in New York. Ooh. And some people saying that doesn't look like me. Some Black women, and that doesn't look like me. Why would they represent us with this woman? And I thought to myself, she looks like my aunt. She looks like my cousin, my neighbor. So I was just very confused by the discourse that I saw happening within the Black community in terms of that statue in New York.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very unfortunate, but I think it just goes to show how strong fat phobia still is, not only in this country, but in the Black community. And just ideas of she does not represent us as a people and they are trying to make us look bad by showing her. This country is profoundly fat phobic, but we don't really see fat people represented in media that much. And when we do, it is in a very particular way, very stigmatizing. So I think of, no shade to them, but TLC, like fat bodies are basically a spectacle on that network. But we rarely ever see, like I said, the desirability, the humanity, and other aspects of, and really what fat people contribute. So then when we have someone who actually goes against the grain, and there they show a Black woman as the centerpiece in the middle of the nation's and arguably the world's advertising square, it's a problem.
And I definitely can get more into that, but I do want to make sure that we stay here and talking about the book and some of the things that we experience from the book. But you do write that Black women on reality television plus social media equals success.
It does.
I immediately think of shows like Love and Hip Hop, The Real Housewives of Atlanta, and the spectacles they've become, especially when we just talk about women of a certain age at this point. Talk about how those shows paired with socials bring success.
Yeah. So when I was doing the research for the show and also just watching the shows, because I am someone who I'm a media studies and journalism professor. So I consume a lot of media content specifically about Black women. So I would always watch some of these shows, at least just to see what they were about. But one of the things that I was noticing is that whenever, and also Nielsen had this rating system, like we know that Nielsen tracked television ratings. And they also had this system where they were tracking the social media conversations around shows too. And they would often find that a lot of the shows that would trend on social media and have a lot of buzz about around them would be reality shows. And just as a watcher, I would see every Monday, which people used to and still sometimes call Ratchet Mondays, when Basketball Wives, Love and Hip Hop, Black Ink, and all that stuff would come on. Almost everything they said, did, and mentioned would trend on Twitter, right? So the networks, even WeTV, which had the Braxton Family Values, which was the start of all of this Black reality TV programming that they had on that network for a long time. One of the executives even said in a press release about like their upcoming shows was that we know that this is an underserved audience. We know that this is an audience that is over-indexed on television. Black people watch a lot of TV. Black people engage on social media a lot. And so we are going to build more programming around Black women and reality TV because we know that they are going to tweet about it while they're watching. And like, you might not even watch a show. And really my book is about what I would call like the golden age of Twitter. And I'm talking about maybe from like 2012 to maybe 2019, because we know Twitter is a totally different place now. And it's not even called that anymore. It's called X, but I'm always calling it OG Twitter. Yep. But, we are now finding that there is so much that is different now because of those changes. But I wanted to make sure that I documented this golden age because I think we have collective national memory that is very short. And unfortunately, when it comes to the things that Black people do and say that tend to create change and shift culture, we don't always get the credit for it. So I wanted to make sure that it was documented. And that's why this was originally my PhD dissertation to get my doctoral degree at Syracuse University. And it is now a book.
Yeah. And just hearing you say that, because I think about, like you said, I will go to social media if I didn't watch something. Like I didn't watch the BET Awards this week, but I watched clips on social media and I read threads and I read, the timeline, and I knew exactly what I needed to know. Yeah. And any clip that was substantial or important, it was there right there. So I didn't have to watch the whole show because I knew social media would have my back and let me know what happened on BET.
Right. And that's a way to help shows and artists remain and keep their relevance just along the social strata. And I'm glad you mentioned the BET Awards because BET really deserves a lot of credit for really being a pioneer in terms of social television engagement. I remember being in graduate school. I was probably too old to still be watching 106 in Park, but I still was. But when I would watch 106 in Park, I would see that they would say, hey, hashtag BET, hashtag 106 in Park. So they were engaging their audience much earlier than other networks are. But again, and they were right to do that because they knew that young Black people were on Twitter. And I mean, we know Black people move the culture, we shape the culture, we know what's going on. And so they were shaping into that, tapping into that is what I was trying to say, sorry. And BET almost every year would dominate on social media whenever the award show would come on. So much so, you might remember some years ago they did these skits called The Real Husbands of Hollywood.
Yes.
And it was so funny, you know, kind of like a spoof on the Real Housewives franchise. And people were like, is this going to be a show? If it is, when is it coming on? Or if it's not, y'all need to make this a show. We really want to see this. So it ended up, but the way that the people who ended up developing the show, including Kevin Hart, was that they knew this because of the outpouring of feedback from social media. And so that show ended up running on BET for several seasons, and then it actually got revived and came back on BET Plus. So it was really because of what the audience said they wanted and what they liked that it became a show. And that has happened multiple times.
And I was one of those people cheering and writing in about Real Housewives, Real Husbands of Hollywood, because it's hilarious. It's
funny.
It's so funny. You're listening to The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Tia Graham. My guest is Professor Sherry Williams, who teaches race, media, and communication at American University. We are discussing her latest book, Black Social Television, How Black Twitter Changed Television. And she has a book talk today at 4 p.m. at Detroit Public Library main branch on Woodward Avenue. Now, I do want to ask you a little bit about those reality shows because, you know, oftentimes we'll hear like the reality shows are a bad representation of Black women, of Black men, but just a bad representation in general. And then I think about shows that have come to be like Insecure and Abbott Elementary and some of the other things. But I think there's a place for both. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. For one thing, I definitely agree that there are some problematic aspects to reality television. Yeah. I mean, because it is just a format that is really based around like stereotypes and caricatures. Yes. And I mean, even if we take out like race and gender, there's always like the country boy, the kind of fish out of water, the jock, the pretty girl, the nerd. And I don't think any of us have like one-dimensional characteristics. We don't live one-dimensional lives, right? So that, I think that in itself makes reality TV problematic in a lot of ways. But at the same time, when it comes to Black representation on reality TV, there are things that I have seen on reality TV that I have not really seen anywhere else. So we know that unfortunately Black families are disproportionately affected by incarceration. And so that whole experience of what it's like for a child who deeply loves their father, a toddler, to see that their father is going to go away and go to prison and be away for a while after they've seen and hugged and played with their daddy every day. We don't really see that on scripted television a lot, but that's a narrative that we've seen, a real life narrative that we've seen on Love and Hip Hop a few times with Scrap DeLeon and Lil Scrappy, when both of them ended up going to spend some time away and their children. I mean, and these were heartbreaking scenes. So you see these little kids like crying real tears like, Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I'll miss you. And I mean, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on these shows, but some of these important narratives I think should not be dismissed because they are important. There was this one show on VH1 called The Gossip Game, and there was this one kind of like gossip jock Viv whose child transitioned while on the show. And a gender transition story for an Afro-Latino family is not something that I often see, but it was seen on that show. And one thing that I found too is that I did a content analysis of what people said while watching some of these shows, particularly Mary Mary and Basketball Wives LA. And even though they did not like the fighting and they thought it was awful, whether it was verbal or physical, and that is understandably so. But there were some people who were saying things like, I hate that they're fighting, but I'm glad that I do see Black women standing up for themselves and not being a doormat for somebody, right? So I think that these images are complex and there's room for people to see multiple things there. And when I was doing my research for this book, I saw that Bell Hooks wrote about Sapphire, the old Amos and Andy character. And she talked about how, and we all know how Sapphire was, overbearing, domineering, the Sapphire stereotype that is kind of like the genesis for the angry Black woman, emasculating and all those other things. But one thing that she did say is that Black women did lament the fact that Sapphire was the stand-in, the solitary representation of them on television. But Black women did also appreciate that here it was a Black woman in the public who is allowed to express her anger, because this was in the 1950s and 60s when Black women were really not allowed to do that. And we really don't have a lot of space and latitude to do that now. So I appreciated her analysis.
We got 30 seconds to go. I want to ask you about you said the golden age of Twitter, 2012 to up to 2019 before we saw that change. Where are we going now with social media?
Where we're going now on social media is a lot of people are moving away from Twitter because we know that after Elon Musk's acquisition, a lot of white supremacy and homophobia really rose on that platform, and even GLAAD designated it as the most unsafe platform for queer people that exists. So I'm seeing a lot of people moving on over to Spill. There's this guy, Alphonse Terrell, who was fired by Elon Musk, and he started his own app, which is Black-owned, Black-operated, and centers Black influencers and creators. There's this new show, Beyond the Gates, CBS daytime.
Mom loves it.
Okay, me too, Mom. But so what I'm seeing there is I'm seeing younger Black people talk about this soap opera digitally in the same way that my grandmama, and grandma used to talk about it in the 80s.
I mean, I talked to my mom about it just like that, so I understand 100%. Dr. Sherry Williams is an associate professor in race, media, and communication at American University. She's the author of the new book, Black Social Television, How Black Twitter Changed Television. Today, she has a book talk at 4 p.m. at the Detroit Public Library main branch on Woodward Avenue. Definitely go check that out. Dr. Williams, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me. I love you, Detroit, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Coming up, Father's Day is this Sunday, and to celebrate, we're going to be speaking with a lot of dads and male caregivers. We also want to hear from you. The number is 313-577-1019. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. And this is the Metro. Stay right there.